Hello, hello, and welcome to Latinx YC, where we discuss all things related to U.S. politics from a Latino, Latina, and Latinx perspective.
Hello, Clemencia.
Hello, hello. ¿Cómo estás?
Bien, cariño.
Your hair looks great.
Thank you. So does yours. I love it. You know I'm a fan.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Clemencia Herrera. I am founder of Moira Studio, and it's an agency that specializes in political advertising for Latinos.
Hello, and I'm Cecilia del Cid. I'm an environmental and social justice practitioner, Latin American. I'm an immigrant, and I'm a community weaver and working in communications.
All right, shall we get started?
Yes. So
All
what
right,
are we talking about this week?
Yeah, so we've been talking about systemic assimilation. It's already such a complex and entrelazado topic. And we sort of talked about where we are in terms of assimilation, how we feel about it, and where we are in our lives coming to terms to being assimilated in different levels. And then we talked about where that came from, where that assimilation came from, how we've been indoctrinated since colonial times into being assimilated. And I think in this episode, we'd like to bring it back around and talk about how this is actually affecting us now, today, and how that's affecting the way that we vote.
Yeah, which is very complex.
Yeah. So
because we are a diverse community.
Yeah, that's right. And we are all in different levels of assimilation. I know that many out there may think, nah. But maybe listen to our podcast again and see if there's anything that resonates.
And
all right, so
that is part of
some
the
of the
process.
things that happen when we are in the process of assimilation and things that are happening right now that I see in my everyday life and that I am guilty of doing before is, one, putting our culture down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me a little about that.
There's so many ways in which we can put our culture down. For many years, and when I was a teenager in my 20s, I considered any kind of Latin American music to be horrible and maybe lowly and just
Popular?
not good. And I actually rediscovered Latino music in my 30s. My dad is a huge salsa lover. And he always listened to salsa, and I was always like, oh, here we go again with the salsa. And I actually, when I started removing that veil of assimilation of like, only American culture is the best one. It's almost like, religious people think that they're the only ones that are going to heaven. Like, only their religion goes to heaven. Same thing. It's like, only this culture is the best one. And when I started removing that veil, I started listening to salsa in a completely different light. Obviously, there's still genres of Latin American music that I don't love. Like, I don't love reggaeton.
Yeah.
All the reggaetoneros out there, I'm sorry, but I still respect your music. But, it's just like I don't like country music, or I don't like, I don't know, crunk. I don't know. There's like other types of music that I don't enjoy. But I definitely started rediscovering Latino music as in seeing it in different light and just really understanding where all that came from, all the years of distillation of that culture and boiling down into this music and singing about struggles and singing about love, and just there were so many things to discover about that.
Yeah, that is really, that resonates a lot. I think my introduction to salsa came when I came to the United States. So Guatemalans don't have a tradition that has changed. But when I first came here, that was not a music that you could learn how to dance at home. Like you learn how to dance marimba, for example, like when you went to parties, or like mariachi music, which were much more closer, I think, to Mexican culture. But I remember thinking that cumbia was música de pueblo. As a person who grew up, so once again, this distinction between urban spaces and rural spaces. And I remember when we would go to other places outside of the city, and people will have they will be out there, you will hear as you drove through the towns, like cumbia is very much traditional.
Cumbia made a big comeback,
and it's just like and I remember making so much fun with my sister in the back, and I appreciate learning about cumbia, and learning how some Mexican cumbia is different than Colombian cumbia, than Paraguayan cumbia, but it's like this. And I think also because of these processes, growing up in the city, a lot of the music that we were consuming either came as pop music from Mexico or South America, or directly from the United States. So like being able to sing in English. Right, so even before I got here, you begin to experience those processes. So by the time you actually immigrate or make that transition, of course you're feeling like, but for me it was the opposite, because at that moment is when I get the possibility to know a lot of people that are not Guatemalan, people from Latin America who came to me to study in that cohort. So I remember one of my favorite things to do is to salsa dance Cali style music in particular. Like I love the Cali style of salsa music, which is very different than New Yorican or Mexican salsa, or Cuban salsa. Listen, it's Cuban, the Colombian one is a lot about the footwork.
Yeah.
And if you know, the traditional Colombian dancers have white shoes, or very flashy shoes, so that your attention will go to their shoes.
Yeah.
Parentheses. But I have appreciated, I enjoy it a lot. And I have had the opportunity to go to Colombia, right? So I think is that those processes extend beyond the boundaries of this country, but they're part of those big systemic systems that we talked about last week. But it makes absolute perfect sense that you come here and be like, what I want to do is to fly under the radar, and you want to belong, right? You more than fitting in, I think we want to belong to a place, and we are willing to leave those parts of us that you don't have to like salsa to appreciate it.
Yeah. But and even if it's not, because salsa is from the United States, right? It's it was born in New York.
I think it was Cuban.
It was like a mambo. Combination of Puerto Rican, New Yorkers, and jazz, and so it was born in New York. And so there's actually, there's a lot of music that was actually developed by Latinos in the U.S. I mean, I grew up in Miami, and there was freestyle. And freestyle, there were a lot of Latinos that did freestyle. I love freestyle, as you could tell from the intro music. And even that is like, oh, that music is el pueblo music or chusma music. And it's actually a culture. And back in the 90s, that was a culture. And there's absolutely no reason to put culture down. It doesn't matter where it came from. And like you said, cumbia, there's just so many styles of music that are being put down as like, oh, that's just like music that the low income people listen to, or even like gangster people listen to. And it's like it's pigeonholed into just negative connotations, and there's absolutely no reason to do that. But really the reason why that's being done is because of assimilation.
Yeah. And there is no hierarchy of music, right? Like, music is music. It should be neutral. Whether you prefer classical music, or you prefer tropical music, or you love to hear all the drums, or a marimba. That is like you like blue over you like red.
Yes.
There is no hierarchy. Like blue is a much more dignified color than red. blue is blue and red is red. And,
Totally.
And music should be that, but because we have those layers that shape things, and because we begin to use hierarchy to decide, well, if you are like a classical connoisseur, then you have been more educated. And the truth is that we know that a lot of those artists that you mentioned come from long traditions of music, like, I don't know, it's not creating music. And that is not just something that happened. It holds connections to ancestors. It holds connections to our stories from lands that we no longer get to visit or see, but that through our music bring us right back to that very visceral feeling of true. Emotion, right? So I think that there is a reason why we have conceived of certain aspects of our culture in hierarchical ways.
Yeah.
And that's what, when we think about as voters, I wonder what it would mean for like a candidate to come to launch a political campaign using salsa music or cumbia or banda, very
just embrace it.
But you know what?
We don't have you to seen use born in the US anymore. We can vary this.
Yes. So that, for me, I appreciate when you talk to me about the layers that you've been discovering, because I think we even do it. It comes from way before we even make it here. And then once we get here, we get to live the the symptoms or the
US
illness.
Has permeated Latin America for a very long time. And I remember back when I lived in Colombia, we used to listen to American music, and people did their best to follow the lyrics. El bus a Pereira, el bus a Pereira. I mean, Andres Lopez, right?
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's like everybody did their best with the lyrics, but everybody listened to American music. So it's been permeating for a long time. But when you come here, it's like a reality, right? It's like you have to really do this.
Yes.
And you really have to learn those lyrics, because Abusa Pereira is not gonna work here.
No. Listen, I remember it took me forever to understand that the song from the Transformers is like more than meets the eye. It used to be something else, like we will say there.
What did you say?
It took me forever because tin, tin. We just made up the words in Spanish.
Oh yeah.
To build until they match.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the one about like, esos son Reebok, son Nike?
No.
Esos son Reebok, son Nike. Yeah.
Those are us, but you see how creative we are.
Yeah.
And I think as we think about this episode, right? How is this episode called? The American Dream. Voting for the American Dream. And before you and I started this conversation, we were talking about, okay, what do we feel about this dream? Is this dream real? And this was gonna say that we are so creative as communities. We have so much grit.
Yeah.
We have so much audacity,
we have a lot to bring to the table.
Yes. Malicia criolla, but it's not malicia in a bad way. It's just like, we are chispudos, we nos ponemos las pilas.
Mosca.
And we can I think we are now in a moment in which we're empowered. We should feel empowered ourselves to be.
But we're not. Because that brings us to the next point, which is, I don't want to hang out or work with Latinos because son maliciosos.
Oh.
They're chismosos. Gossip. Or metidos. They want to get into your life. Or they're too intense. They talk too close to you. They're late.
They want to hug you. They want to kiss you.
or just more they're late, or they don't pay on time, or they don't, there's just so many, things that they say about us that, maybe white Americans started part of it. And then even Latinos have perpetuated it. I also hear back in Colombia, it's like, oh, Colombians, are like this. Like, we deserve the country that we have because we are.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of, like, that's just starting in the wrong place. I mean, you have to build yourself up, not tear yourself down. Like, if you're already starting with shame, putting yourself down, thinking that your culture sucks, that everything that we do is wrong, how are we even supposed to rise up to anything?
I have to say, from my experience of Colombians, I saw this dislike some of those stereotypes because my personal experience of working in Colombia and working with Colombians for years has been of like people who are hardworking, dedicated, inventive, like they have wonderful customer service. Like the way in which you feel welcome to work there is, I will live there in a blink. Yeah. I find that Colombians, like work really hard, and that this construction of time is very different. Like it was even different coming from the United States. Like I will travel and they will be like, we have a meeting at 7, and I'll be like, meeting at 8:30 to 9, please. And they will be like ready to go at 7 a.m. and they will work from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. like these super long hours. And I was like, no. And I was just like, no, we can do it like 9 to 5. Or like because we were gonna do other things that needed to. There were moments when we worked in workshops like doing all days, but like I also wanted some boundaries, right? And I think that as we think of our constructions of time are very different within Latin American countries, in between them, amongst them. They're very different to the United States when I think time has been monetized. Once again, talking about capitalism with every like time is money is such a US kind of phrase, like time is money.
Yeah.
So if you were wasting my time,
you'll be like, nope.
Because they're thinking different, right? They're thinking what needs to get done. It takes me 2 hours or takes me 4 hours to accomplishment. It's more like goal oriented. Mm-hmm. And if you took 4, you get your salary is your salary. And if you took 2, then you have extra 2 hours, then now you're free. Like the idea is to complete the task, not to monetize every single, and that has been spread through the world from the global north to the global south. And so constructions of time are also tied to our constructions of power, to our economic systems, and how we monetize time, right? Like when you're a worker, you sell what do you have? You have your labor and you have your time. And you sell it to your employer. You're like, I commit to go there from 9 to 5, and you commit to pay me an exchange.
Yeah.
$7 an hour. So in Latin America, when no one, until I came to this country, no one had ever been paid by hour. My mom was a teacher. She had a salary. Like my dad had his salary. Yeah. The goal was to get their tasks done. If they did them quicker or needed more time. And obviously, sometimes that means that people end up working more because they're really committed. And that also has its cons.
Yeah.
But I have never, this idea that every hour had like a price. Yeah. I learned it
Capitalism.
Here. Yes.
And that's really pervasive because, right now, I think we're all in agreement that extreme capitalism not working great. And not just for Latinos, for every American and everyone that lives in the US. Everybody's kind of suffering at the hands of extreme capitalism. So this, time construct of like monetizing every single hour and it's not, I'm not even talking about it's not working financially. Maybe it might be for some, but it's also killing people. I mean, it's
Exhaustion.
causing extreme exhaustion, chronic fatigue, sleep disorders, high stress. People are taking all kinds of medications and self-medicating, alcoholism. I mean, I could keep going, but you know, this whole monetization of time is killing people.
Listen, like your industry is creativity. How much more productive are you when you are well rested?
Oh, a million times.
It didn't matter if you can work every hour, but once you hit that wall and you're tired, there is zero productivity
for you. Yeah.
And you can still sit there and be like, I'm marking the hours, I'm counting them. Yeah. Nothing is coming out of you.
Through it. and you know what? Powering through it has been my motto for so many years, and I've also had burnout. Like serious burnout, like being sick and not being able to work, sick from burnout. And
wow.
And like that's not great either, because everyone in this whole like we're gonna power through everything, that could kill you.
Yeah. And as you know, we talk about like modeling things and we use our stories to model. I have taken time off from extreme, from my doctor being like, you need to rest. How can I help? Let's get you time to rest. Having to take a medical leave from work, for example, due to exhaustion. Not a long one. And I have benefit, and I have the privilege to have that possibility.
Yeah.
To live in a state that allows me to have family medical leave. Yeah. To live in a place in which I could have an employer who was like, okay, take the time off. But a lot of our people, so like, I think we kind of almost got to this point. We get to redream the American dream, right? We are super creative. We are here to transform. We are here to like weave together new futures as we become voters, as we become candidates, as we become public servants and run for our local elections.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, us saying this is not working or, you know, this is exhausting doesn't really mean that we're lazy. We're just putting things into perspective, and maybe it could be useful if you listen to us. I mean, Europeans say the same. I mean, there's a reason why I know many, because I lived in Europe for some time. I know many Europeans that were like, absolutely no way I'm moving to the US. Those people work themselves to death. And I don't want to do that. I enjoy my life. I enjoy working my limited amount of hours and going home to my family or with my friends and having my full month of vacation and being able to, you know, enjoy my life more and not just like be so work driven and success driven and all that. There's many Europeans that I know that think that way. So it's not just, you know, the lazy Latinas, quote unquote. It's a lot of people that think that way. So maybe, you know.
But I think
it's time to listen, because it's also killing Americans.
Yes. And we are participating in a political system that is not working for the majority of us, right? We know that the moment in which one person in a household could work a full-time job and support 3 or 4 other individuals no longer exists. We know that people can, even if you're in a partnership, and 2 individuals go out there and work and then they support children, or if you're single, most people need to find roommates. A lot of people need to be like, I cannot pay for an apartment on my own. So if you're working 40 hours full time, that's what we have said in the past. We just want a dignified life. We want to make sure that you don't have to live in a mansion, But what you should be able to live in a dignified place that has clean water, a good place to live, that is clean, that is not dirty, that is not contaminated in air, that is not contaminated in soil. Like, we want neighborhoods that are healthy. We're asking for the very basics, and we need to think like that when we're voting. We need to think, who is out there asking the government, or like working within the government, so that I can have access to those things.
Rather than
that is what the American dream was.
You're right. Rather than perpetuating what's not working and voting for the things that are not working, we need to start voting for our own selves and what will work for us, and kind of redefining this American dream. Redefining the American dream.
Absolutely. We're right now, and I know we feel like, we're not empowered yet, but I think we are. When you have a word on the tip of your tongue and you're like, you can almost think about it, or a thought, you're like, oh, I have it. We're right there. It's about to be birthed, a la luz. We have right now, we're in a moment in which I think the landscape is changing in this country. I think that a lot of different communities that have been marginalized for decades and centuries are in a moment in which we could collaboratively unite and transform our political landscape. And I think you and I have had a lot of conversations about, like, why does our community still vote against, for people who are not advocated, like almost against their interests, their most basic interests. And that's what kind of started these conversations between you and I.
Exactly. Because it's puzzling, and we're sort of untangling this puzzle little by little, and it's coming a little bit clear for me. I don't know if it's coming clear for the people out there listening, but it's sort of like, what is this American dream that people are voting for? Does it work? Is it working for you? Is it working for white Americans? Have all white Americans reached this dream? I would dare to say no.
And I will share with you, sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't call it a dream, I call it more of a hallucination. Do not call it a pesadilla. So I'm gonna be like, someone had a trip, small, like, didn't, had something, like some bad, substances, and I'm like, okay, this is something and we have been sold. We absolutely, you don't know how many conversations I have had through my time living in this country, in which people who are immigrants, who are working really hard, who can see the difficulties, who can see the things that are not working, will not let go of that like that idea.
I mean, it's as simple as, for example, American dream, right? The most basic thing, home ownership, right?
Yes.
Latinos want home ownership. It's like the pillar of achieving this dream. Guess what? Latinos get denied home loans 4 more times than white people.
And that's due to redlining.
This is from a source that I read. So how are we supposed to achieve this home ownership dream? No matter how hard we work, even if we qualify for it, we get denied it.
And that, not just that, like, when you get your realtor, they will show you homes in a specific neighborhoods. They will not show you the best homes in all the neighborhoods. Even your realtors, you have to be really careful, because people have their biases, and they'll be like, oh, they don't want, they're gonna they want to live here with people who are like them. Like, they will not show you the properties that are best for you. There's been some.
Is that from your experience?
I couldn't say that. I had very, that's from studies, from like knowing about interacting about bias. Actually, for a lot of Black and there is a whole policy called redlining, which whole neighborhoods you could not, and there's been studies that prove it. Like I could go, there was like studies in which people will send white people to rent apartments that were fake, like they were in an investigation. So you will send, and then you will send black people to try to rent the apartment, and they will not get rented, and the other people like with the same credentials, the same income. So there has been studies over and over. So I've actually seen it with renters during my advocacy work. I've seen when some of my clients or some of the people that I was accompanying through could not get apartments where they wanted, even though they could pay for them. They would go, they would visit, and then once they saw them. But what did happen when I purchased my home, and my partner is white, identifies as white. We remember hearing that there was a Puerto Rican couple looking at the same house. And we were like, oh, and that's interesting. And then we realized that because I was brown, he suddenly wasn't white anymore. Now he qualified as Puerto Rican, and they were talking about us. I was like, oh, that's weird. That day that they're saying that couple went to see the house. I was like, that's when you and I went to see the house. I was like, oh, I wonder if they saw us. So it was a Puerto Rican couple. So suddenly I wasn't as dark. Rican. I became Puerto Rican, and he, who is like, he's like, no one has ever, and Puerto Ricans can be of any race, right? So he could be Puerto Rican. Yeah. He's like, he's like, no one has ever. I was like, I was born and raised in this town. Yeah. No one has ever confused me with a Latino man. But since he was with a brown woman, he couldn't just be a white man and a brown woman, right? So like, we got the house that we wanted. So I cannot say that it affected. I just thought it was interesting how the people who lived in the block conceived us from just looking at us. It was like it's kind of a funny story, but it has like a pinch to it.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I don't mind. Like, if someone confused me with a Puerto Rican, like, it doesn't bother me. But I thought that the white people living in that block, that's what they thought.
Yeah.
The Puerto Ricans were moving into their neighborhood. And we weren't the first biracial couple. There was another older biracial couple in that block. They were our neighbors, and they were the first ones to show up with like a housewarming gift. It was the very first person. She brought me. It was the middle of January, and she brought me this little bag of like teas and chocolate. So it was. But I have endured, like, I mean, it didn't affect my ability to purchase.
Yeah.
But it could have. If I didn't have, what would have happened if my partner would have been brown or black?
Yeah.
Would have the person, the owners agreed to sell the house to us? I don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
Would they accepted our offer? We don't know, right? Like, I cannot speculate on that. I don't want to. But I do know that other story.
Yeah. So to boil things down, you could be voting for the economy, for example. Oh, you always hear the economy. I mean, that's what many Latinos say about Republicans, the economy. But you can vote for a strong economy. But if you're getting denied a loan, no matter how strong the economy is, no matter how strong the housing inventory is, no matter how low those rates are, you can't achieve the dream.
And I also think that...
So I really think that instead of voting for this economy, you really have to vote for the systems that are in place that are keeping you from getting those loans, which is not the economy.
And the economy is not the market.
Right.
The economy is the ability for you to produce and to have a strong labor force and to ability to have healthy wages that have moved up with inflation. Like, what we understand, what has been painted to us, Republican talking points about the economy.
Yeah.
How many, if we thought about it, how many people have a stock? How many Latinos do you know who are invested in the market?
Yeah, I don't know, but that's not the most important. I mean, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, how are you going to invest in the stock market? the stock market also is not a good measure of how the economy is going.
Exactly.
And really, I mean, vote for minimum wage.
But yes, we want to be
because
higher
if you raise minimum wage, eventually all the wages go up too, right? So we're voting for ourselves.
And I think and you tell me this, like, I always feel like the Democrats maybe never do as good of a job bringing those points down to the voter block. I feel like the Republicans have better talking heads, like are better at this communication part. I was like, why can't the Democrats be like
I tend to agree. I mean, I also think that Democrats kind of like dance around certain topics because they want to be sensitive and they want to be inclusive. Whereas sometimes, the Republicans might not be so, careful about that.
Yeah. I just think that as we think and we continue to talk about this, like, how are we voting? And maybe in the next episode, we can break it down maybe and say, like, this is how the Latinos voted in the last elections. And there is new elections coming. Like, I know, I'm very excited. I am new to the city and, I'm excited to see to get to know the candidates and the place that I just moved into. But I just think, like, how do we begin to be more proactive and in a way that doesn't feel like you have to do so much work? Because I think also we're working all the time. How much time do you have to really look at platforms and believe that?
Hey, that's my job. I get to read all that fine print and interpret it to all the people out there, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I know that people don't read. I always say that to my clients. You may have the most beautiful that page, that website talking about what you believe in and what the causes you support and all that. Nobody reads that. Nobody reads.
But if your neighbor, if your mom, if your aunt, or whatever, that is when it's important how we're talking, right? That's why you and I decided to begin to have these conversations, because we're not advocating for one or the other. We're just saying, let's talk about the issues that matter to us as voters, as Latino, Latina, and Latinx individuals, citizens in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's almost that time.
Oh no, we have so much more to talk about. I mean,
thank you so much.
There's more stuff about it. Like, Latinos vote against immigration reform. Why? The Latinos vote, some Latinos vote for this gun, like for the NRA and for gun ownership, when guns have ravaged our countries. Why would you like to put more guns in the hands of people? And there's just so many things that they vote against, and this is all about
Latinos vote to cut down social services.
Yeah.
When our communities need them.
At some point, many people came in and they needed those services, even if it's translation services. And you know what? And this is just like, my belief. One day I may need a hand. I may need it. No matter where I am now, I may be doing good, but at some point, maybe I'll need some help. So why can't I give help to people now when I can? Because one day I might need it. And then and then somebody's gonna say, nope.
You are so correct. We are one bad accident, one illness closer to bankruptcy than we are ever to becoming a millionaire. Not a billionaire, a millionaire. Most people are like a divorce, an illness, a car accident away from financial, disgracia.
Yeah.
And we still vote because we think one day we're going to be millionaires, and when we make it there, we want to get all the benefits. I was like,
I am so tired of looking at GoFundMes for people who've had a death in the family or an illness. I am so tired of it. And not because I don't want to donate. It's because this shouldn't happen. This should not happen. The country should be taking care of its people, not
especially
other people.
We could do that in other ways, right? We could do those networks. If we're willing to do that, imagine what we could dream together and how we could rebuild it and construct it together so that it works for most of us, for all of us, especially those most vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. And so the conclusion, I know I kind of hijacked this timing thing. I think the conclusion, because I like to get to a conclusion, is that, the host country, which is the United States, we can all agree that the system may not be perfect. The American dream is not achievable as the way it is posed right now.
Yeah.
So instead of saying to Latinos, and I'm just going to focus on Latinos because this is my expertise, is, instead of what Americans saying, you're here, so you have to be like me. It's more like, hey, you're here. Let's learn from each other. Because you might also have some good points that I may want to listen to. And it's time to think about what that conjoined dream would look like, right?
Imagine when a tapestry is woven strongly, you can tear it away by pulling at one strand. But when something is weak, you lose, you lose one point and you have and everything dismantles, right? So you're absolutely right. What a dream it is to think, okay, here are these communities, these people who are coming into our country, let's engage them, let's connect, let's get together and dream a new dream, build a new place, a new political system that has room for your needs, my needs, and everyone's needs.
Yeah, because we all, it's not like we want other people to fail. We don't want what Americans to fail. We want them to succeed just as much as we want to succeed. We all succeed together.
Yes, there is enough for everyone to thrive.
Yes.
If you get your pie, your piece of the pie doesn't mean that there is less pie for me. There's enough pie. It's an endless pie.
It's an endless pie.
And with that,
and it's all about listening, engaging, and respecting each other.
Yes,
it's all about the love.
And connection, and that we belong to each other, right? That there is enough space for all of us to have our perspectives, to have, we are not saying that there is not fair to have healthy debate, political debate. Yes, it is healthy.
Listening.
But let's have debate. Let's engage. Let's not roadblock each other for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Right? Let's collaborate.
This was awesome. Thank you, Ceci, for bringing your knowledge and your amazingness and your insight and all those awesome conclusions that you come up with.
No, thank you so much for doing the work that you do. I appreciate it. I've learned so much because as a voter, I am excited about what it means to participate better, to be politically involved without the old ideas, the old fears of corruption or falsehood. There has to be better candidates, and how do we support those candidates? How do we get how to become better as organizers? I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate your work a deep way.
So do I. Un besote.
Quiero.
Thank you guys out there. Please leave us comments. Email me, Clem at latinxycpod.com. I kind of blanked there. Clem at latinxycpod.com. We have a Twitter handle, latinxycpod. there's more. So I said that we will have more social media, but we had some technical glitches. We will have social media next week, and we will have a YouTube channel as well. And we love to hear your feedback and what you think. We'd like to hear if you want us to talk about any topics. Please let us know. We'd love to take a deep dive into them.
If we have said any terms or things that you feel like, oh, I didn't understand it, can you tell me more about it, clarify them, let us know, leave us a review, share us with your friends and family, and leave us a comment.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Bye. See you next week. Bye.